The Dallas Cowboys aren't that far away from being legit contenders, but they do have a couple of holes that they can't address this year. We'll tell you what they are next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this football season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all year long. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're going to take a look at some needs, issues, problems the Cowboys have, however you want to say it, and debate whether we think they can solve them before the end of the year or if the Cowboys will have to try to figure it out this offseason. And I want to start on defense because it sure feels like they've fixed the defensive line. I don't want to say solved, but they fixed the defensive line, but they have two glaring holes at linebacker and safety that just are kind of the bane of their existence on defense right now.
Yeah, and really the impetus of this episode was kind of doing a game review of the Lions game and then realizing that a lot of the problems that were cropping up in the Lions game were the same problems that we were going to have to whack-a-mole at the end of the season going into the offseason for the 2026 season. So it really did feel like, after the Lions game that it was a microcosm for the issues that the Cowboys are going to be facing leaving the season going into the 2026 offseason. And yeah, I mean, again, for how long have we been talking about those two positions specifically, right? The linebacker position and the cornerback position. I mean, you got Overshown back from injury. You got Revel back from injury. And I think it added at least some healthy bodies to the situation. But, Revel obviously really struggled and is a rookie who's making a huge leap and is going to take those kind of lumps. That's just part of this. Hopefully he can kind of continue to smooth things out over the last few games of the season. Overshown played well, and I think is playing, at an average linebacker level, which is, a sky high level above anyone else that's playing linebacker for the Cowboys. But, at this point, we're all just kind of hoping he just stays healthy and then continues through the rest of the season so that he can also maybe take another step of healthiness and athleticism going into the 2026 season. But again, even with those situations, even with a guy like Logan Wilson being brought into the mix for the linebacker situation, it's very, very clear that the Cowboys are looking at those two positions as positions that they have to find, upgrades for going into the next offseason.
Let's start at linebacker because you and I have been on this for a while that we think linebacker honestly might be their biggest need on the entire roster. You've got Kenneth Murray, who I don't think is going to be on this team next year. Logan Wilson has a $6 million cap hit. They won't even play Logan Wilson over Kenneth Murray. We can get to that in a second. You've got DeMarvion Overshown going into a contract year, and I have no idea how you handle those talks. You've got Jack Sanborn, who's a free agent. Maris Leofau can't get on the field, and then you've got Shamar James. So, I mean, you could tell me that the Cowboys need two linebackers this offseason, and I wouldn't push back on that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, look, I think, and also depending on who this defensive coordinator is going to be next year, which is a whole other conversation. Maybe we should do a whole pod about that. I think, it's gonna matter how many linebackers you get. I mean, listen, at this point, I'm pretty sure that Shamar James is the only linebacker who is technically under contract for going into next season, or at least
Overshown. Yeah.
Okay, so Overshown. Oh, it's going into his contract.
Yes,
Yeah.
Overshown Leofau, but Leofau doesn't play.
I was just going to say, I think Leofau is the next thing that we have to talk about here, is because Leofau clearly was a pick by one of the other administrations, like almost everybody else on this defense at this point. And I think he has just simply not taken the steps that we need for him to keep him. And I understand that he's on kind of a cheaper contract, but as that kind of gets older, I wouldn't be shocked to see him, get cut, just because it feels like you're not even getting the kind of explosive plays that you were getting from him earlier the season. Now it's every time I hear Leofau's name or I see Leofau or I notice him, it feels like he's out of position. He's being, he's been too aggressive, and he's paying for that, and so I think if the Cowboys should really take a step back and see what they've got and maybe look at, clean slating this situation outside of maybe Overshown and James, like we said.
And I know a lot of people are probably wondering, why aren't they playing Logan Wilson more than Kenneth Murray? I mean, neither of these guys are good. And just to answer the question at the beginning of the show, they're not going to be able to solve their linebacker issues unless a bunch of balls just start, bouncing into their hands in coverage. That's about the only way. But why do you think Murray is playing significantly more snaps than Logan Wilson?
Familiarity, I guess, at this point. I don't really honestly know. I mean, I don't know that Logan Wilson is so much better than Kenneth Murray at this point, and that's not necessarily a positive thing or an indictment on Logan. Well, I think it's an indictment on both of them, to be honest. They're just, neither one of them are good enough to be playing full-time snaps out there. I don't think it's just because they want to rotate these guys. I think that they're trying to, again, like it's a lot like the Sam Williams situation where you've got a guy that maybe has some high volatility that you want out there, I guess, because he's one of your better players overall. But that's because, in short spurts, he can create a play and hopefully not create two plays for the other side. Right. And I think that's where we are, except, with Kenneth Murray and Logan Wilson at this point, you're almost completely underwater. I mean, the last time Kenneth Murray made a huge play for you was several games ago. And since then, he's made several key errors and given up touchdowns and been bad in coverage and blocked himself out of plays multiple times. And it's too much at this point. The Cowboys got to find ways to upgrade the position.
And Murray has a lot of faults, but Logan Wilson can't run, and it's really hard to have linebackers on the field that can get exposed sideline to sideline. I mean, we've seen a number of times where he's left out on an island and he just has no chance even against quarterbacks. So I would like to see more of Logan Wilson, but you also know your defense is going to get a lot slower. So linebacker is a big issue for the Cowboys moving forward. Secondary, it just feels like, Landon, between Donovan Wilson, between the cornerback situation, they're like two average starters away from having a pretty good unit. But again, easier said than done, because it's hard to find even average starters in the NFL in the secondary.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about it, is that it feels like you could replace a couple different spots and upgrade the position and feel good about it. It's like the Cowboys have a nice floor kind of at the position, not that nice, but there is a floor there. But it doesn't also feels like the ceiling is not very high either, right? So
No.
you've got to find a way to kind of inject some talent here, and I do think the one good thing about that position is that it does feel like you could kind of do it at a couple different spots. Like, you're not kind of pigeonholed to like just putting it at a cornerback or going to get a nickel or a safety. Like, any one of those spots, you could go find a guy, and if it's an upgrade at the position, you could upgrade it and improve the secondary overall. And I just want to go back to the linebacker second level stuff real quick. I just think it's such an important position, especially moving forward in the NFL. Like, you got to have good linebackers now, and like, I think part of that too is the kind of second level play that the safety has been playing with Donovan Wilson specifically. I wouldn't be opposed to kind of trying to find a way to upgrade that position as well, because I think it helps a little bit of everything. So I just think there's a lot of different ways that you can improve this defense at this point. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how they attack it going into this offseason.
They just need players. Like
talent.
They need talent. And I mean, how much I love to talk about positional value, and like safety and linebackers are right next to running backs in terms of positional value, but they just need guys to fill these spots. And I think like getting average play at linebacker and safety would greatly upgrade this unit or this defense more than anybody anticipates, because they're so bad at those two spots right now.
If I felt like I could get, a defensive lineman later in the first round, and Caleb Downs falls to me, and at my first round pick because of positional value, sign me up, man. I'm not passing on that this year just because of the positional value. I think he serves a need that the Cowboys potentially would want, and I think in the modern NFL, these kind of second level players have a little bit more value than they did maybe 5 years ago.
All right, Landon, let's talk about the offense, because for the most part, that unit is set. But there is a brewing discussion about the offensive tackles that we need to have. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every single time. It's not just something that you wrap. It's a way to share memories because Aura isn't just your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when you give it to a loved one, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. We gave one to my mom a few months ago. She absolutely loved it. She has all of her pictures of her grandbabies on there. So one of the best gifts that we've ever given her. It's the holiday gift that actually gets used and not just thrown into some junk drawer around the house. And for a limited time only, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That is AURA frames.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out incredibly fast. So order yours now to get in time for the holidays and support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'd also like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And if you are a true diehard Cowboys fan, the Everydayer All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with Landon and I, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and get this, a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. So make sure to head to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to get access to all of these great features. It's unbelievable. Landon and I have exclusive film studies for you. We've got cut-ups. We've got so much good information that you won't get just from the podcast. So make sure that you check it out. All right, Landon, let's talk about the Cowboys offensive line, because Nate Thomas had a really rough outing last week against the Lions. Terence Steele was just as bad on the right side. What does the Cowboys situation look like on the offensive tackles moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a game where you wish you had Tyler Guyton back, and I think that, hopefully he'll be back next week, and that's obviously, I think, where we're going at left tackle, and I'm excited for Tyler Guyton to take, hopefully, another step this offseason, but I think right tackle becomes even more of a question mark because of what you've seen, right? I think Nate Thomas showed us a lot of positive stuff at certain points during the season. This game, he really struggled, and obviously, he was going against Aiden Hutchinson, and that context is important. But again, this is the NFL. You're facing an Aiden Hutchinson almost every other week, or certainly what felt that way this year, right? So I think that the Cowboys are probably going to go into this situation with Guyton as the starter at left tackle. They're probably going to continue to try to move towards a Nate Thomas at the right tackle situation, and the hope is that you have a guy like Nate Thomas or Akeem Adeniji or one of your younger guys that you're trying to develop that takes another step. And they do have a couple of these guys that they like, not just Nate Thomas, that I think that they're we'll see kind of hopefully develop in the offseason. And I think that there's going to be a competition at that right tackle spot this next year because of the number that you see with Terence Steele. So it's going to be incumbent upon Terence to kind of fend off all comers next year. But yeah, I think, this game certainly kind of makes your eyes widen a little bit with the whole situation with Nate Thomas. But as it stands right now, it's not like you have these 2 first rounds. It's not a great offensive tackle draft necessarily anyways. And you really cannot go into this draft, trying to expect to spend another first round pick on an offensive lineman at this point, especially when I think you've got guys that can take a step that can make this work. And worst comes to worst, you do have Terence Steele, and maybe you work something out to extend him to make that number a little bit more reasonable or something. So I think you have options here, but I do think that, what you saw against the Lions certainly, made your eyes widen a little bit about the future of specifically the right tackle position.
You cannot spend another first round pick on an offensive lineman.
You've
already spent 3 in the last 4 years. You can't do it. Tyler Guyton and Terence Steele are going to be your tackles for the remainder of the year. I think they're going to make Guyton play through a high ankle sprain, because even on a high ankle sprain, he's probably better than Nate Thomas. I guess I'm more interested in what happens in the offseason, because right now, and again, cap number is a bad way to judge this, but I believe Terence Steele has like the third or fourth highest cap number on the team.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could do some stuff. You could restructure it. You could maybe give him more guaranteed money to get it down. But I'm at the point, like, is it even worth it? Are you better off just cutting? I'm gonna look at the number right now. If you cut him right now as a post June 1 cut, excuse me, you can save $14 million.
Yeah.
I'm just at the point. It's like I'm wondering if you do that. And I know that you don't want to go and do all of this stuff, because of one offensive tackle, but you have paid Tyler Smith a lot of money. Maybe the best solution is having Tyler Smith be one of your tackles, Tyler Guyton be the other tackle, keep Booker at right guard, and then just play Bass or whoever, because it's a lot easier to fill in that guard spot than it is to find a tackle that you feel good about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't love that option, obviously, but I mean, it's an option for sure. It's
I like doing that better than drafting another first round offensive tackle.
I would 1,000% agree with that. 1,000% agree with that. And I think that the number is really why we're kind of forced to talk about this, because I don't know that Terence Steele's play overall has been so terrible, especially this season. I think maybe versus last season, that you feel like you just can't go on without, you can go on with him. I think it's that you're looking at that number and realizing you could save a whole bunch of money. And look, you've done some work here to the point where you've developed some of these offensive linemen that it's probably time for some of these guys to kind of step up and take Terence Steele's spot, right? Or at least see if they can, if we can get a competition here going. And look, I think the bottom line for me here is that I do think the Cowboys have the pieces that they probably need in order to, continue to try to make this an in-house solution as of right now. Maybe with thinking about like looking at the free agent market, but to me, I think you try what you've got with Nate Thomas. You see what you've got with him versus Terence Steele, some of the younger guys that you drafted, and see if you can find one of these guys who maybe is taking the next step or can take that job and maybe do it as well, but on much cheaper contract.
I just think we're at the point where this organization needs to start either developing more, day three guys, or guys that can fill roles. And again, I know it's not the perfect solution to kick out Tyler Smith to tackle, but one of the reasons your defense has so many issues is because you've spent so many resources on offense, and really, in particular, your offensive line. So that unit's got to be so dominant to overcome the other flaws in your team. And they've played well at times this year. That's not been the case. So I think now you've got to use those resources on defense, like a lot of people expect, whether it's a linebacker and a defensive end or whatever combination, and just figure out the offensive line. You don't need to have 4 first-round picks on the offensive line every year.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I think that, they still have good resources that they spent, draft picks and time developing, still kind of loaded up in the hopper. I just think that, one of the guys, the main guy that was sort of your ace in the hole to replace your aging right tackle, he had a rough game. And he had a rough game at left tackle. And I think it's just a reminder that there certainly is no certain thing when you're developing a later round offensive tackle in the NFL.
I'm just wondering if maybe the better solution, like cut Terence Steele, right? Save the $14 million and use half of that on one of these like journeyman tackles that we see play all the time, right? Like you guys know the list by now. It's like Cam Robinson and Trey Pipkins and Jonah Williams, and none of those guys are great. Like I understand, none of those guys are great, but maybe you do that and you're able to bring back a Javonte Williams, and that's just a better solution than continuing to roll out Terence Steele, who just doesn't really look like the same player pre that was injury in 2022, I believe.
Yeah, and I think you could do that strategy, both of these strategies, right, at the same time, right? You go into the offseason, you see what you've got in these young guys and see how they develop. If they aren't like wowing you right away, then there's obviously veteran guys out there that the journeyman guys that are pretty much always available in the beginning of the offseason that you can just sign to a deal, have them, maybe practice once a week in camp, and then roll out there week one as your starter if you need it.
All right, let's talk about these special teams unit, because that's one that is mind-boggling how bad they are in some phases, at least. We'll talk about if that unit can be fixed this year or if they're going to have to make some big changes in the offseason next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be absolutely massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part, but that's why Game Time is so clutch. It finally gives fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. And with Game Time, you can track prices all in real time, get alerts, get great. And when great seats open up, you can buy the tickets the moment that they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands, and it makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You just pick a game, tap a section, and you'll have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download Game Time today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live betting is the best when the game starts to shift, like when a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump into that moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, player props that update as guys heat up, and you can bet on the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all year long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Later, let's talk about the Cowboys special teams unit, because Brandon Aubrey, fantastic. Brian Anger, been really good this year, but everything else has been atrocious. Can that get fixed in the final 4 games of the year?
I mean, I'll even take it a step further. Trent Sieg's been fantastic. I mean,
yeah.
Besides all the snapping, also recovering a key fumble. So, yeah, I think it's the things that are great about the special teams are the things that are kind of been perpetually great about the special teams since we've had Brandon Aubrey, right? And Brian Anger. It's these guys are professionals. The kind of key special team only guy have been great. I think the problem has been with, you know, the kind of coverage units and the return units, right? It's that it feels like you've found a way to kind of neuter one of the better kick returners in football in a rule situation that we thought would be a huge boon to his skill set.
Is that Nick Sorensen's fault, or is that Turpin's fault? Because I feel like Turpin has been very hesitant to hit the hole at full speed anymore.
I think it's both. I mean, I think he's not getting a very clear picture, and the blocking schemes are not, you know, are part of what making him hesitate, because he's never had that problem before, right? And I also think that, you know, the part of it is him with the kind of, I don't know if this is like a Chuck Knobloch like level tick thing where he's like, now he's just waving it down like every single time the punt. I don't know what he was doing, and he was so insistent that he didn't do it. And we're like, man, we all saw you do it. Like, you know, so I do think part of this is Sorensen. And look, let's go back, right? When Sorensen got hired, he was one of the few guys that we were just like kind of scratching our head about, because he didn't, you know, he wasn't a special teams coordinator last year. He was unsuccessful defensive coordinator with San Francisco. And when he was with Jacksonville, I think was the last time he was a special teams coordinator. It wasn't exactly great. So it really did feel like a placeholder choice when he got kind of chosen. And I think that the results have kind of ultimately, you know, bore that out a little bit, where you've seen kind of middling results here. And, you know, and you go back and watch it too. It's like they're not doing anything special on their coverages, but they're still trying to, you know, play the numbers game of pinning guys inside of the 35 by kicking the ball in play. And they're just not consistently good at making the tackles or getting to the ball carrier in time to make it worth their while. And I think in the Lions game specifically, it really, really hurt them, and especially that last one where they ended up taking it at 42 yards back to the I think their own 49. So
yeah, and they just have gotten crushed on special teams again outside of Brandon Aubrey all year, and this team just isn't talented enough right now to do that. Like they can't overcome that. Now the offense can, but they're giving up like huge returns. And what we saw like this week against the Lions is if you give the ball to the Lions at the 45-yard line, like you have no chance, like no chance. This is a bend but don't break defense. And if they got to get 5 plays to be in the red zone, you just don't have any way to win games that way. Here's my fear though, Landon. I think you and I have gotten to the point where we want to see Matt Eberflus, or want to see the Cowboys move on from Matt Eberflus. I have a feeling they're not going to move on from both a defensive coordinator and a special teams coordinator in the same offseason. It just sounds like to me that would be almost too much turnover for a first-year head coach going into year 2.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, they did that this year, and
well, like, because they got rid of everybody, right? They got a whole new staff.
I know. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think. I mean, look, maybe that is the reason that holds them back, but it definitely should not be.
It shouldn't be. I 100% agree. It shouldn't be. But
so we'll see. I mean, it'll be interesting to see exactly how that whole situation plays out, because the defensive coordinator position itself is an interesting kind of gambit trying to replace that.
Yeah, special teams has been a real issue for the Cowboys. We'll see how much effort they put in to fixing that unit this offseason. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for tuning into the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow so you get all of the latest episodes. And did Locked On Cowboys make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it to us on social media by to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. And for those of you on video, we'll send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure that you check out the Locked On NFL podcast, our second listen of the day. Make sure that you follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.